Hi, it's Tracy from Two Rocks Tarot with another look back in time. I don't even know, I might have to try and think of a name for a playlist for this particular types of readings. I'm going to do another, I might even call it Ancient Voices. We'll see how it goes. But this is a subscriber request from Rose Francis, and she really likes my videos that I do on the Pasar. The one that I did on, I think it was the Galloway Horde, and the on Ramesses, and this one is going to be on Anne Boleyn. So there's quite a lot of questions that I'm going to ask her, so if you get bored. I don't think I'll be time stamping it, but I've allowed automatic timestamps, so I don't know if it's going to come up in this video or not. So we all know that Anne Boleyn was King Henry's wife, whom he had beheaded with a sword, which was his kind of act of mercy by having her beheaded by a sword. I mean, if you have a look up on beheadings, there are truly some horrific accounts of beheadings. There was an elderly lady, her name escapes, but the axeman took 9 times before he chopped off her head. So you can just imagine that, can't you, honestly? So before I start with the questions, I will be using the Celtic Dragon Tarot, because I feel like it sort of suits this time period. I'm actually going to read an account of Anne Boleyn's speech at her execution, and this was made by the Tudor chronicler Edward Hall. So her execution took place on the 19th of May in 1536 at 8 o'clock in the morning. It was the first public execution of an English queen. So this is what she said. "Good Christian people, I come hither to die, for according to the law, and by the law I am judged to die, and therefore I will speak nothing against it. I am come hither to accuse no man, nor to speak anything of that, whereof I am accused and condemned to die. But I pray God save the king, and send him long to reign over you. For a gentler nor a more merciful prince was there never. And to me he was ever a good, a gentle, and sovereign lord. And if any person will meddle of my cause, I require them to judge the best. And thus I take my leave of the world and of you all. And I heartily desire you all to pray for me. O Lord, have mercy on me. To God I commend my soul." And then after being blindfolded and kneeling at the block, she was heard to repeat several times, "To Jesus Christ I commend my soul. Lord Jesus, receive my soul." So that's kind of ironic, isn't it? How she was still so very, very spoke highly of King Henry, even though she was due to die. So let's see what she's got to say, hey? So the first, gosh, they just flew out. Didn't get time to shuffle them or even ask the first question. So the first question I'm going to ask is, did you want to marry King Henry? And just for a little bit of backstory, it actually took 6 years of counselling and back and forth of trying to get married, because the original queen he was married to, Queen Catherine of Aragon. Now, I think he was married actually, just going to grab a few notes. She was married to her for, I can't even read my writing, hey. I think for 24 years he was married to her, and she refused a divorce because, you know, for her it was sacred. She was a Catholic, so to her marriage was sacred, and getting a divorce was a sin. So it took actually 6 years of counselling, and how we wanted to. Apparently Anne Boleyn was, Catherine originally was married to his brother Arthur, who died before even the marriage was consummated. So they didn't get to that stage. And that's how he ended up getting Archbishop Canterbury Thomas Cranmer dissolved of the marriage in 1533 and get her anointed as a queen. So that was how it ended up. But it took 6 years of going back and forth with this particular, so he could marry Anne Boleyn. So that marriage got dissolved in 1533 on June the 1st, and then she was anointed as queen. On the Cosmati pavement in Westminster Abbey. In 1533, on September the 7th, she gives birth to Elizabeth I. So our actual current Queen Elizabeth is actually descended from Anne's sister Mary. And she had a 45-year reign. Okay. So not long after, arguments started to happen. He found her too headstrong and opinionated, which he fell in love with her at first because of these traits. And on January the 7th in 1536, Queen Catherine dies. On January the 24th, Henry falls off his horse and he's knocked out for 2 hours. So it was near fatal. So he was actually unconscious for 2 hours, and they thought that he would actually die. So then on January the 29th, Anne actually miscarries a boy. And people say, chroniclers of that area say that Henry changed after he had that actual accident, and they think it was brain damage. Now in our days, we'd recognise that as brain damage, and this is when he started to change and become paranoid and a really dangerous man. So Henry and Thomas Cromwell trumped up the charges of adultery, like that she wasn't a virgin, that she wasn't got married, and then 1,000 days, and also that she slept with several men, and including her brother as well. And everyone now thinks, of course, that these charges were actually trumped up. So on the May the 2nd of 1536, she was tried and found guilty. And the people who were executed with her on that day were Henry Norris, these were supposed lovers of hers, Francis Weston, William Brereton, Mark Smeaton, and of course her brother George Boleyn. So I wanted to actually just give you a little bit of backstory onto how and why I'm asking certain questions. So there's actually 17 questions, so it's going to be a long video, but I feel it's pertinent to do it. So anyhow, that's how we managed to get his marriage annulled with Catherine, who did not want to get a divorce because she didn't believe it for religious reasons. So let us see. So the first question I asked was, did you want to marry King Henry? Okay, so this is Anne Boleyn. Now this tower shot this card shot out the tower. So I don't think I'm actually going to I don't know if I'll put pictures, post them up there, but that's the tower. So did you want to marry? Now, I feel really what this is saying is that she kind of felt like she had no choice. Once the king's eye was on you, he had 8 wives. So, once this king's eye was on you, you really didn't have a choice. You were, particularly for women back then, you were just like cattle. You were just traded in. So that's an interesting card to come up. I'll see if I will put the pictures up. I'll see how this sort of plays out. Because the next question I want to ask her, was it a love match? So did you love Henry? Was it a love match, King Henry? And the 5 of Pentacles. A very interesting card to come up, isn't it, for that particular question. Was it a love match, the 5 of Pentacles? We know the 5 of Pentacles is the 5 of Pentacles for me is kind of like the 5 of Cups. It's it's more of a spiritual lack. And don't forget, the reason how King Henry actually got his divorce is he actually made his own religion up. So he left the Catholic faith and he made his own religion up called what we know as today as the Church of England. So he was the one who started the Church of England purely so he could get divorced. All right. So was it a love match? I think it was more of a bargaining between the two. He desperately wanted to have a male heir, not knowing that that Queen Elizabeth would become one of the most renowned monarchs of her time, being reigning for 45 years. And I think Queen Elizabeth is up to 70 years now, 70 or 72, our current queen. So to have that as a love match, I'm kind of going to lean towards no, that it was more of a he caught her eye and he loved her, apparently being headstrong and everything like that. This is if it's true. I mean, this is a long time ago that we're talking about people. So, but I feel it was more of a contractual agreement. All right. Now, there was also some rumours of Mary, her sister, having an affair and a couple of children with King Henry. So I'm going to ask, was your sister's Mary's son Henry the King's? Because apparently they looked a lot alike and he did provide for him. So let's have a look. So was your sister Mary's son Henry the King's son? I'm taking a while to answer this one, hey? Maybe she doesn't want to say. Could be some loyalty still. Let's have a look. So it was your sister Mary's son, King Henry's. There we go, finally got one peeking out. And I'd say definitely yes. Look at the Empress, have a look at that. Definitely yes, the Empress. Definitely, hey. I mean, it couldn't be more obvious. And it is written in the Chronicles. If you read about this time, it's quite fascinating. And it was written that he looked a lot like King Henry. So, you know, there you go. All right, then. So now next I'm going to ask is, were you hurt by Henry's affairs? Because he did have, you know, he was renowned for having affairs. Now, of course, we only know King Henry as being someone who's rather fat and obese. But in his prime, he was supposed to be a really handsome man. It was only when he had this accident he couldn't do sports. He excelled in sports. He played tennis. Apparently he's supposed to have had magnificent cars, which was a sign of great sexual appeal back then. So, you know, he was a very good-looking man in his youth. And then when he couldn't do sports or anything because of his injuries, that's when he started to put on weight and suffered from gout badly. So let's have a look. Were you hurt by Henry's affairs? Ace of Pentacles. That's an interesting card to come, isn't it? The Ace of Pentacles. What I'm taking with that is, and because there's actually 3 dragons in there, was she hurt? I don't think that she really... I don't think she was surprised, and I don't really think she was hurt, because I don't think it was like really a love match, you know, as even though if you read some of his letters that he actually wrote to her were quite explicit, actually. So I'm taking that I don't think she was really surprised. And what I'm really attracted to is the actual upright tree. He was very virile, so I don't think that she was surprised, and she just accepted it as her lot, as a lot of females did back then. So now I'm going to ask a big question from her. Were you unfaithful? Okay, so were you unfaithful to King Henry? The Two of Wands. That's an interesting, well, I'm trying not to say interesting, but that's an unusual card to come up. The Two of Wands. Were you unfaithful to King Henry? Looking at you would say, I'd say hesitant yes, but with one person, not as many as what King Henry, you know, I mean, everyone agrees that they were trumped up charges. So what I'm going to ask, actually, because, you know, don't forget there was a 6-year going back and forth for him trying to get a divorce and to marry her. So what I might just ask, because to me that looks like yes, but with one person, were you unfaithful in your marriage to King Henry might be a better question to ask. Were you unfaithful while you were married? And then we got the Five of Cups. And I would say, because we know that's a lot, I would say no. All right. I think that when there was a contract, you know, going back and forth, that 6 years of him trying, perhaps she did seek solace with someone else. Perhaps she was in love with someone else. You know, you've got to think that women at that time had no rights whatsoever. So even if she was in love with somebody, indeed, one of his later wives, and the name escapes me now, I think it was his last wife, actually, she wanted to marry someone else, but she ended up marrying marrying King Henry, and she was, according to him, was a very good, obedient wife or whatever. I'm pretty sure it was the last one now. And when Henry died, she actually married the man that she wanted to marry. Who she fell in love with. So she actually did get to marry him, but unfortunately, she died after childbirth. So I think she was only happy for like 1 short year or something like that, which is very, very sad. So I'm kind of leaning towards that. perhaps during those 6 years she did find solace with somebody else. But of course, when the king sets your eyes, you've got no choice. You have to go with him. You have to marry him. And so, but as for when she was married, I'm going to take the Five of Cups as a definite no, that she was not unfaithful to King Henry, not at all. So now I'm going to ask the question, because people think when he had that fall, and this is when everything snowballed, in 1536, did Henry change from the man you knew when he had that near fatal fall from his horse? Look what come up, the Knight of Swords. I'd take that as a definite yes, the Knight of Swords. Not only does that acknowledge, I mean, have a look at that dragon, how fierce it looks. And, and this is when he became a really paranoid and dangerous man. Everyone said that after he had that fall from his horse. You got to think, in 1536, being unconscious for 2 hours, they really thought he was going to die. So I'm going to say yes, very quick to temper. Even though we've got a woman with her sword aloft on the actual dragon, I would say that's definitely Henry is a dragon, and he took it out on her, because we have got like a queen figure on top of that dragon. That is freaking amazing, isn't it? Absolutely amazing. Oh, that's incredible. So yes. So now I'm going to ask, what do you want people to know about yourself? I've got 2 cards here. Oh, yeah. So the first card is, I got the Emperor. And that very much says how she was controlled by men. Okay, everything about her life was controlled by the king. I mean, all he wanted was a male heir, and she produced a female. Okay, so she was very much in control by the king. And have a look at the second one, the Eight of Swords. Now, how freaking heartbreaking is that? So the camera decided to stop for some reason, but have a look at the second card, is the Eight of Swords. I mean, that is heartbreaking, isn't it? What do you want people to know about yourself? And to have that come up, and to me that just says that she was just trapped. She was trapped with nowhere out. No matter what she did, no matter who she pleaded to, she was just trapped. There was actually no way out. There was no one who could help her. Absolutely no one. Because the dragon is looking at her and she's not looking at it, maybe there could have been someone who could have helped her, but but they couldn't. I highly doubt it. I'd highly doubt it. Yeah, that's very, very sad, isn't it? Very, very sad. So, of course, what I'm going to ask now is about the speech that she said at her execution. And what I'm asking is, were you forced to write your speech at your execution? Because it's very, very, very nice, isn't it, to King Henry? So, were you forced to write your speech at your execution? The Knight of Cups. The Knight of Cups. That's, I'm not going to say that word again, but the Knight of Cups. Because we know the Knight of Cups is your knight in shining armour, and I really don't think she felt that way about him. And I think because this knight is a lot younger, and how I said that King Henry was, when he was young, he was a very good looking man, which you don't really see any portraits of him. You only see that, that rather fat looking obese king. So were you forced to write that speech at your execution? I think maybe no. I think she did write that from the heart, even though it was like, I'm feeling it was a contractual agreement. But I think she was writing from a point of when he was younger, But it's a hard one to answer. Yeah, it doesn't really answer it, does it? Hey, were you forced to write? Because that sort of suggests it's coming from the heart. Actually, no, you know what? Because if you look at that card, we've got a female that's looking up towards the sky. She was going to die, okay? And then you've got this younger knight on the dragon looking away. So I'm going to sort of take back what I just said. I'm going to say no. I think somebody else wrote that speech for her and she was forced to say it. And, you know, she was going to die anyway. And maybe, perhaps she thought if she said this speech, maybe it would save her. I mean, I could actually ask that. Let's ask it. This is an extra question I didn't think of asking. Did somebody else write that speech for you at your execution? Oh, no, hang on. Did you, well, yeah, let's just ask that. Did somebody else write that speech at your execution? Oh, yeah, look at that. Justice. Yes, definitely. Somebody else wrote that speech and she was forced to say it. Definitely. Yeah, I'm going to have to. I knew I had to ask it a little bit more, you know. Yeah, so somebody else wrote it. So that's why the other one didn't really answer the question, the Nine of Cups, because somebody else wrote it and she was forced to say it. And perhaps she thought maybe by saying it, you know, somebody could step in and save her. But I'm pretty sure that she actually did lose all hope. So, yeah. Okay. So, let's have a look. Was it Henry or Thomas Cromwell behind your planned? Actually, see, they did say that Thomas Cromwell sort of trumped up these charges as well. But of course, Henry was already had his eye on someone else and was already with the next queen when this was happening. Okay, he didn't sort of muck around. So I don't think I'm even going to ask actually that question. I was going to ask, was it Henry or Thomas Cromwell behind your planned demise? I think I'm going to leave that. I'm just going to ask, do you forgive Henry for having you executed? King of Wands. Do you forgive Henry for having you executed? I've got to look at, even though the picture's going to be up there, but I've got to have to look more. Do you forgive him? And do you know what? I think this card just answered my previous one. Was it Henry or Thomas Cromwell behind your planned demise? If you have a look at that dragon, he's got his mouth right next to the king's ear. So I do feel that Thomas Cromwell was behind it. Okay, you're going to have to, there's so much happening in their years that those of you who are interested in this topic are going to have to do a little bit of research themselves, because there was just so much there, and to why it happened, why they had a falling out and so forth. But I think, yes, that he was definitely in his ear. Okay, so, and he believed him, and he had her executed. As for forgiving Henry, doesn't really answer it, does it? I'd say I don't think she really has an opinion on it, hey, about forgiveness. I'm going to ask for clarification, because I think that she wanted me to ask the previous question, well, we know now. So I'm just going to say, do you forgive Henry for having you executed? Oh, that one come right up then. The High Priestess. The High Priestess of ever forgiving. What would you take with that question? Do you forgive him, and having the High Priestess? So she's asking me, I think, even all these years later, for my opinion. And I would say, if I'm thinking about my... I think she just accepted it. There was no forgiveness, there was no... I think she just accepted it. That's what I'm, it was, we've got the two dragons fighting above the high priestess. It was above her head. She didn't think like that, and I don't think women did think like that back then. So she just accepted it. Yeah, that's what I've got. The next question I'm going to ask is, did you suffer much pain? Hopefully not. Now, this is very interesting card to card. I'm sorry to use the word interesting, but it's pretty freaking amazing, because apparently they say that Henry started to feel a little bit of remorse, and because he did love her, and don't forget, if you've got someone in his ear saying she's unfaithful, and it made the king look little, but look what we got. The King of Swords. So he actually hired someone from France to come over, a swordsman, to cut off her head with a sword because it was quicker and cleaner. So I'm going to take that as no, she didn't suffer. That she didn't suffer. So my husband just rang up. So looking at the King of Swords, I would say that that she didn't suffer. It was very quick. About suffering any pain. I think it just happened that quickly. She was gone before she knew it, and I'm really hoping and praying it's true. Now, the other question I asked is, did you see King Henry when he died on the other side? So, did you see King Henry when he died? I was just curious to that. Oh, I peeked out there. Look what happened, the Five of Swords. Did you see Henry? That's an amazing card to come up. The Five of Swords, that shows a battle there. Did you see him? What do you think? Did you see him on the other side? Well, that's telling, it's interesting to think that he might be in hell. He might be in a place where he's having to fight, I suppose, for honor. I mean, they do say that, you pay for your sins when you go across the other side. We've got that in ancient Egypt where they're weighing up the hearts, and, and those whose hearts were not balanced with the feather, then they were said to, got eaten by the crocodile god. That is an amazing card. So I'm going to ask, because I put if so, what happened? I'm just going to ask if so, what happened, because I just want to know. Yeah, I've got another one. If so, what happened? And look what came up, the Nine of Swords. So I'm going to take it that there was a bit of a battle over there. So definitely he had to realise what he did. And you can see by the Nine of Swords, he realises he was wrong. What he did was totally wrong. But I don't get the feeling that they did meet up on the other side. Because we've got the battle between two. I'm not feeling that they did meet up in the Summerlands or heaven, whatever you want to call it. Because he had to fight. He had a fight on his hands over there. Whether to, I just get it. He realised that what he did was wrong, because clearly the Nine of Swords shows that clearly like that. And whether all his wives, the ones, because there was another queen that that he executed as well, whether they all come together and condemned him for what he did. Do like they just said it like it was, sort of thing. But I feel like that he definitely was made aware of what he did, of how wrong it was, and it weighs very heavily on him. And I feel like he's got a fight, had a fight for his soul over there. That's what I'm feeling. Very amazing two cards to come up, isn't it? So now I'm going to ask her, what did you think of your and Henry's daughter, Queen Elizabeth I? And the Five of Wands come up for what does she think of her daughter. The Five of Wands. That's an unusual card, isn't it? The Five of Wands, because that suggests a battle as well. So I think what that means is that she admires her for because, don't forget, she never got married. Okay, she never got married. She was known as the Virgin Queen, which is highly unlikely because there was no autopsy was allowed when she died. So highly unlikely that she was a Virgin Queen. And indeed, you should read up about her. The history is absolutely amazing. Actually, I might even do a video later on about her. But I would say that I think she admires how she fought for what she got. Because even if you look at that card, it even kind of looks like a bit of a redhead more than a blonde, more red in that. So I feel like that she admires her for the battles that she fought against men in particular, because I mean there was pressure on her to get married and have a heir. So yeah, that's quite interesting. Now, when Queen Elizabeth died, there was a ring on her finger that she never took off, and I'm going to put a picture of it off there. And as you can see, there is a portrait of herself and another woman, and it's been thinking that it was her actual mother, but she did get along very well with one of her stepmothers. I think it was Catherine Parr. It was just, there's a lot of history here. So the ring that Queen Elizabeth wore has a portrait of herself and another woman. Is that portrait of yourself? And this one has got the King of Pentacles. Is that portrait of yourself? Because there's great debate, because I think it could have been Catherine Parr because she got along well with it. But because it's a king standing next to an empty throne, I'm going to say yes. I think it is her, but I'm just might even just rephrase that question so it's a little bit easier. No, actually, okay. Oh yeah, all right. Because what I was gonna say is that I just asked it more simpler. Maybe I'm asking the questions are a little bit hard. You got to think of the language barrier. I think from hundreds of years ago. I don't know, especially being an Aussie. But I'd say by looking at the King of Pentacles, yes, because it was a king that separated her from her mother. There's an empty throne there, so she didn't get to have her as a mother. I think she was 2 when she got executed. And then I asked, just, is that picture in the ring as a portrait or is of you? And then I got the 6 of Wands. So I'd say definitely yes. Definitely yes. So then, of course, I'm going to ask, what do you think of our current Queen Elizabeth? The 9 of Cups. That's quite beautiful, isn't it? The 9 of Cups. What do you think of our current? And I think, it's like a wish card, isn't it? So what does she think of our current Queen? I'd say that she kind of think that she wishes she knew her. I get that feeling that she wishes she could have been her back then, like having a nice long reign, bringing up her daughter. I think there's a lot of wishes and hopes and dreams that were dashed, absolutely dashed for her, absolutely. And the final question is what do you think of the royal family now? The Hanged Man. Oh, that's an interesting one. The Hanged Man. So I don't really think current royal family. I think, well, we all know what's happening with Prince Andrew and, the scandals and all that. So I think that what she thinks about that is it's suspense. It's suspenseful more than anything. There's a lot of drama in it and stuff like that. Actually, there's a final, actually this is the final card actually, is do you have a final message for us? Is there something you want to say? Do you have a final message, Anne? Queen of Swords. Do you have a final message? The Queen of Swords. I think, you know what? I think she would like us to think of her as a queen, and I'm sure we do. I'm sure we still acknowledge that she is a queen despite her being executed by her husband, that she always will be queen, okay? I think, and because it is the Queen of Swords, she would like to be remembered. I think that she would like to be remembered as the Queen of England, but to be remembered in prayers and in our thoughts, and not to be forgotten. I think that's the message in there, that she doesn't want to be forgotten. And I don't think she ever will be forgotten, for sure. But I think that's her final message, which is sad, and it's just what can you say? Okay. Well, that's it for another. I think I will be calling this series Ancient Voices, because I think that's appropriate for these. So until next time, take care, and thank you, Rose Francis, for your wonderful suggestion.